Okay, good evening or afternoon, whatever time it is in your local area, and welcome to Equine Episode Examination, where today we will be discussing the Season 4 episode of My Little Pony, Simple Ways. So if this is your first time joining us on Triple E, welcome. Quick rundown, we're just going to go ahead, we're going to talk about this episode in Season 4, kind of what we liked, what we didn't like about it, maybe analyze a little, just in general, have a discussion with everyone here on it. Obviously, we are here in the call, but we also have the chat room. So if you want to participate in the chat and the live chat with us, you have to go over to CinemaQuestria.com and visit the stream there, and you can participate in the discussion in chat. If you're watching this in a recording, unfortunately, unless you can go back in time, you will have to join us for the next Equine Episode Examination. We record these on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And we're quickly running to the end of our episode flashbacks here for a little bit. Normally we'll be talking about the new episodes that have premiered the previous Saturday and having discussions on those. We've been just kind of doing these episode flashbacks to previous seasons during the hiatuses to get us through, help getting through the hiatuses there. So, but yeah, I guess I have a couple more weeks of that, and we will be back to talking about new episodes. Anyway, with all that out of the way, I'm Rain Shadow, and I'm joined by a few people here in the call that'll be also participating in this discussion. If they want to introduce themselves. I swear there's people here. I'm not talking to myself.
Well, don't duck everyone all at once.
I was waiting for you to go.
Well, yeah, I'm Mr. Ben. How's it going, everyone?
And I'm Jay Smith.
And that's everyone. So,
Unfortunately, Matt's not here with us today, so.
Matt is probably in Sleepyville. I believe that their times are changed, so he's back to the 5-hour, back to the 5-hour difference over there in UK land. So, yeah, anyway, Simple Ways. That is the discussion we will be having today. Season 4 episode. What are everyone's initial thoughts on Simple Ways?
This particular episode title just kind of reminds me of that Green Acres old show.
Just re-sing that theme song with Applejack and Rarity. I could see that happening.
Yeah. Especially the whole Farmland is the life for me. Yeah.
Yeah, between the farm and the city, it kind of fits really well, actually. And plus, everyone loves shipping Rarity and Applejack together.
Except on Rarities, and instead of complaining about the country life and the Green Acres song here, she embraced it in this episode.
Well, just like in Green Acres, where they had tried to embrace it. It's, I guess my initial reaction with this is it lives up to its title. It's a very simple episode. It's something that we're probably not going to be talking a lot about it today on Triple E compared to like last week's episode, because it really is a simple episode. We kind of, nothing a terrible amount happens to it. It just kind of is a slice of life where it presents us with the situation, and we just kind of see how these two characters take it, and we get to kind of dive in and see how each of those characters, talking about Rarity and Applejack here, see each other as well. It's nothing substantial in terms of an episode, just kind of a little fun romp, like what happens if... It's a little different for MLP too, because, romance isn't something that the show really delves into that often, especially with its main characters. So it's something a little new and different for the series, but it's just kind of a really simple thing, like what happens if you have this little love triangle kind of thing going on between Rarity, Applejack, and Trenderhoof, and kind of see where the story goes from there. And it kind of delves into messages about being yourself and not trying to be someone else just to try and impress someone for it. But not a ton to really discuss. It's not a particularly deep episode for it, so. So we'll kind of go ahead and we will talk about the story and the writing. This is the second episode that was written by Josh Haber. Of course, Josh Haber went on to go to write a lot more episodes and become the story editor for his past season, season 6. Had a big part in writing that. This is his second episode, his first episode of the show, and the first episode of season 4 was Castlemania, all the way back at the beginning of the season. So he wrote that. Yeah, I remember that tweet from Megan. Definitely has a lot of it has a lot of his hallmarks of some of his episodes with some silly stuff. You see him on Twitter. He's kind of a silly person, so. Very much a character episode. Like I said, I mean, not a ton happens in terms of the actual story of the episode. Yeah, I think the characters were written really well. It was fun to see Rarity and Applejack kind of poke fun at each other as the episode ends, and not really do so in a mean spirited way. But it's just kind of tongue in cheek, just kind of parodying each other. To the point where where Applejack is sort of able to show Rarity where she was kind of going wrong there, through kind of doing what she did. Very, very similar in a lot of ways to the Mysterious Mare-de-Well in terms of the problem and sort of how the problem was solved. Where in Mysterious Mare-de-Well, of course, Rainbow Dash is kind of being a little too cocky and gloating with her heroic endeavors, and the main 6 kind of show her how kind of what the problem is by doing the same thing she is and trying to take that credit away from her. So it's similar in some aspects to that episode there. But it's funny because it really shows, and it's going to be hard not to get into the character discussion here, but it really shows just the... Josh Haber was able to write it in such a way where it really showed the two characters having a good understanding of each other, where Applejack knows that, that Rarity isn't like that. And Rarity tries to push back, like, how do you know? Maybe I like Farm. He's like, no, we're pretty good friends here, and we know each other really well. And I know that this is not who you are. Yeah. And let's be truthful here. I mean, Rarity doesn't necessarily know a lot about farm life and all that kind of stuff. It's not one of her interests at all. So I mean, she's going to be viewing sort of that thing from a exaggerated point of view. I'd say, I mean, Applejack is actually a little closer, and as Mr. Ben points out, in terms of that, and of course she's had some experience with the high society kind of thing back when she was a filly, obviously, with her when she went to live in Manhattan with the Oranges. So I think she has a little bit better understanding of the high class than Rarity does of sort of the Applejack's more farm life.
Well, not only that, but Applejack really has that experience on pretty much all across the board. Not only does she have the knowledge of the high life, but she also has... I mean, she's grown up on the farm, so she knows exactly what she's talking about when... Like when you said, when Rarity really likes the farm life, Applejack's just almost effortlessly able to call her out on her BS on this, saying, no.
And really, Rarity only really gets that kind of over the top ridiculous when Applejack is kind of forcing her to. And that's kind of what Applejack's plan is at the end there, is she's Rarity sort of starts out with a more stereotypical kind of, maybe a little bit exaggerated cartoony version of Applejack, kind of looking at Applejack through her own lens, and then it starts getting a little bit more intense and exaggerated as the episode goes on, as Applejack, as Apple Jewel starts really prodding her and forcing her to take it to the most extreme levels, to the point where her plan is pretty much to have her do that until eventually she's able to see sort of how ridiculous what she's doing is, and it gets to the point of her saying, "I love bathing in mud," or something like that, and jumping into the mud for her to really kind of open her eyes and kind of stop being blinded by that love that's kind of making her trying to be something that she's not. I mean, this episode definitely does take it to like extreme kind of cartoonish, exaggerated levels in it, but I wouldn't say at any point either of the characters should have been insulting to the other. I mean, like I said, Applejack is purposely pushing Rarity to go to these extremes for it, and rather enjoying it as well. I mean, maybe not necessarily specifically jump in mud Technotron, but she's trying to get her to the point where she's gone so far and so far over the line that even she, in her love-struck blinded, frenzy that she's going through, even she can see how ridiculous what she's doing is, how ridiculous it is of her to try and be something she's not, to try and be something that's the exact opposite of her, try to be Applejack. I mean, Rarity and Applejack are extremely opposite characters in a lot of ways, and so it's all about her trying to make Rarity see how ridiculous she's being and trying to be Applejack, and be something she's not. Yeah, this is the kind of episode where the story kind of, I don't want to say writes itself, but it's very much character driven. Whereas there isn't like a ton of plot points or, a very intense story structure like we might get in some of the two-parters or more action-oriented episodes. This story is pretty much, here's the situation, here's the characters in the situation. Where are these characters going to go? We know the characters, we know their personalities, we know how these characters have been developed and interacted with each other over the past 4 seasons. So what happens when we put these characters into this situation? And it's all about sort of just seeing the episode through those characters' eyes and writing what they would do. It's not a very complicated story thing, and I think Josh Haber has shown over this episode and the previous episode and his episodes to come that he has a very good understanding of the characters, and I think that's one of the reasons why they had him be story editor the past season, is because of that understanding of the characters that he has. And this is a really good viewpoint into that, with this episode being so character driven and kind of seeing what those characters would do to push the story along, rather than just the writer himself coming up with things to push the story along. It's definitely an interesting story concept as well. I mean, for this show, and especially with the fandom that has developed. This late. This isn't like a season 2 episode or season 1 episode. This is, a season 4 episode where the fandom has been around for a while during this season's production. So, introducing the waifu stealer kind of character was a pretty fun story concept, because this is, it's a children's show. Stuff like love and stuff like that and is not really tackled that often. We got Hearts and Hooves Day and that's about it. It's definitely tackled, like Hearts and Hooves Day was definitely tackled through very much a kid's point of view, through a kid's eye, from it. And obviously with the CMC being the main characters of that it really helps that. With this episode, it was a little bit more through an adult eye or teenager's eye kind of thing, with Rarity having this sort of crush on someone she's never even met before with Trenderhoof. And it deals more with a little bit more in terms of, I don't want to say adult, because adult has a lot of different connotations, but a little bit more mature, a little bit more grown up view of love. So it's an interesting thing to tackle in a show like this, because it's not something they do that often for good reason. They do it a little bit more often, obviously, in Equestria Girls, because that's aimed at more of a teen audience, where this is aimed more at kids. So it's not something they do a lot, because it's something that's hard to do while still making it be appropriate for that target audience. And so they kind of do it in a very fun, tongue-in-cheek way, where it's easy enough for a younger audience to understand kind of what's going on in terms of Rarity. Very simple. Rarity is jealous of Applejack, and how Trenderhoof is showing more affection to her than to Rarity. And I think they pull that off very nicely in a way that keeps it at a kid level, while still being very enjoyable as an adult kind of watching it and tackling a little bit more grown up kind of topic. And he does a good job about kind of grounding the story in a more like kids will understand. Because, I mean, let's be truthful, like, the actual goings on in this story in terms of one of the characters having, a crush on this, and then that crush is axed because the person they have a crush on their friend. It's not something that maybe a lot of kids can relate to. It's something that adults and teenagers can definitely relate to. Some of the other shows some of these other shows demographic, but for kids, maybe not so much, but they ground that. Haber grounds that very nicely, just in terms of a lesson about being yourself. And it turns into something more about that, rather than just this being some episode of wacky goings-on when Rarity's crush doesn't, return the feeling for her or something like that. They ground that with this lesson about Rarity being someone she's not, to try and impress someone else, regardless of the romantic, situation involved in the episode. She's trying to impress someone else. And she's trying to be something she's not, and trying to be someone else in order to do that. And that's something that people of all ages, and even kids, can relate to and can have experience for, especially younger kids trying to figure out who they are, and you're growing up and discovering a lot of stuff about yourself. And it is a good message about that they work into it, about being being yourself and knowing who you are. And also looking to your friends, because your friends might even know you better than you know yourself. And we see that with Applejack, just knowing exactly who Rarity is, and knowing when she's trying to be someone she's not. So I think that's one of the things I can really appreciate about this episode's story. I mean, this episode isn't going to be my favorite episode of the season or something like that, or anything like that. But something I can really appreciate about the episode's story is taking something like this love triangle, which is not something you would really expect to see in this show. And I know a lot of people were angry to see that kind of story in the show for reasons. But I did appreciate them doing that kind of topic, but then still being able to make that very much relatable to the target audience. They're not just doing this because, we got older people watching the show, let's give them a shipping episode because, fan service or anything like that. They still very much tie this back into the show's core message and core demographic. Yeah, that was the Top Bolt episode. No, that's not the Top Bolt. That was the newbie dash episode last season, Mr. Ben, with where she literally impersonated all the other main 6, which was just hilarious.
Yeah, my mind just kind of went off on its own. I just started mentally envisioning Fluttershy just perfectly emulating Dash to a T, just for just for laughs.
Yeah, the episode had a good pace to it. I mean, it was a fairly slow, slow paced, steady paced episode. It hit all the points in a good amount of time. There wasn't any part that really felt like they had to speed it up to make time. All the beats and all the acts of the episode story wise were timed out really nicely. Then getting to the big kind of climax where Rarity finally realizes that she's kind of going overboard with trying to impress Trenderhoof, and leading into the lesson and the resolution at the end. Yeah, I mean, this episode has a lot of visual gags and humor in it, but I'm definitely coming off of last week's episode. Definitely a lot slower paced in that regard. And like I said before, I really did like how we slowly see Rarity sort of devolve into being more and more of a caricature. Because we got to remember that the first time Rarity kind of gets jealous in this episode and sees that Trenderhoof is a little bit more attracted to Applejack, the first thing she does is she dresses up in a very nice kind of Southern Belle kind of dress. And takes on a little bit of a Southern accent. She doesn't immediately go full on hillbilly with the jeans. She starts out simple and kind of mixes herself in with Applejack. And it's as Trenderhoof continues to reject those advances from Rarity, she tries to be closer and closer and closer to what Applejack really is, and goes farther and farther away from herself, to the point where she overshoots who Applejack is and becomes almost a caricature of Applejack, because she's gone so far past it, because Trenderhoof still wants nothing to do with her at all. So she just keeps shooting past it, and I did like that from a writing and a character perspective for it, because it shows that you can kind of see that thought process that Rarity is going through, where she's let me just be a little bit more like Applejack and see if I can he likes that Southern flair, so let me add that to my persona, and then eventually shoots past it to the point where she's just redneck hillbilly, eyes crossed, talking like crazy and stuff, and obviously not who Applejack is, but she's just gone so far past that she's become that caricature of her, and then Applejack keeps pushing her farther to the point where she finally breaks. think we can kind of move to the character discussion, because we're going to start drifting towards that anyway here, because this is, like I said, really a character-based episode and a very character-driven story. So there's a lot more to talk about in terms of the character. As I was mentioned in chat, so it's a good place to start off. I agree that I think Spike was really well written in this episode, and especially in a few specific parts. Yeah, we see him, of course, kind of being his normal, let me do everything for you, Rarity, and and helping her out, and being very polite about it. But you get to the point where Rarity is kind of breaking down and crying and stuff, and talking about how you don't know how it feels like to have the pony you have a crush on just reject your advances, and he just kind of gives that little fourth wall blank stare, like seriously, to the camera. but still he doesn't understand why Trenderhoof would be rejecting her advances, but he was nice. He had some good moments in the episode there.
So yeah, this was a nice little step in the direction of like Spike beginning to mature a little bit in regards to that. Yeah, maybe my advances toward Rarity probably aren't ever going to be reciprocated. So it's kind of nice to see a little bit of that going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Trenderhoof himself, I mean, he's pretty shallow as a character. Obviously, he's a little bit more of a plot device in this episode, just to try and shove in between Rarity and Applejack and lead to the story and the lesson we're given here. Very much, your stereotypical, trendsetter, or what's the word I'm looking for? Hipster, that's the word I'm looking for. Kind of a hipster, like, he was cool before it was cool, kind of deal. Obviously, fairly oblivious to Rarity's intentions in the episode, and I like him. He has good tastes in ponies. Of course, a lot of other people are like, "Oh my gosh, waifu stealer! Get your hands off my waifus." Flash Century 2.0. Yeah, I mean, he's that kind of cool, and he kind of. He kind of goes. It's kind of interesting as a character in the episode. Like I said, he's kind of a very shallow plot device, but he does go through some things, and actually goes through a lot of the same things Rarity goes through in a much subtler way, which I like to see. It's to the point where he kind of learns the same lesson Rarity does, and learns it from Rarity in the end, because he's going so far out of his way. He likes Applejack, and he kind of is interested in that kind of whole farm life. And interested in Applejack. And so he starts out with that, his cool trendsetter, hipster kind of persona. But we see him, just like Rarity does, slowly kind of go closer and closer to trying to emulate Applejack, to the point where he kind of comes in at the end there, and he's in overalls and whatnot, just like Rarity was. So we see him go through the same exact progression as Rarity does. Not quite as comical. Of course, he's not being poked at like Applejack is poking Rarity to try and egg her on. But we see him go through the same thing and learn that same lesson, where he's become someone he's not at the end, because he's trying so hard to impress Applejack, and he seemed like he knows a lot about farm life and stuff, just like Rarity is doing the same thing to try and impress Trenderhoof. I really liked some of his moments where he's trying to like impress Applejack with some of his knowledge, and he's like, "Yeah, I once like something about him, like once discovering like an endangered species of apple," and he's like, "I ate 3 of them," or something like that. It's just like something ridiculous. Like it's like it's like saying, "Oh, I discovered like an endangered baby seal, and then I clubbed like 6 of them," or something. So it's just kind of, it was kind of a funny comment. And Applejack wasn't too kind of pleased with that either. And no part in the episode is he really that kind of unredeemable jerk character. You can be sympathetic to him. He's going through the same exact thing Rarity's going through in the episode. He's not trying to be a jerk to Rarity or Applejack. He just has, some wild crush on Applejack, and she doesn't want to return that. Gets to the point, obviously, where he goes over the line in terms of, but he's never intentionally being a jerk to anyone. He's just kind of blinded by love in it, and then kind of gets shown that lesson at the end. Yeah, he's a little bit maybe Mr. Ben. It's he didn't know when to stop. He doesn't realize that he's going a little too far in terms of trying to hang around Applejack when she, at least to us, the audience, obviously doesn't really want to have anything to do with him. So he's not really creepy in the sense that he's like spying at Applejack through her bedroom window kind of creepy, but he's a little bit overly attached to someone and they don't even know each other. Kind of a little subtle kind of lesson in this for maybe some of the older audience about, falling, pining for someone, falling in love with someone, having crushes, whatever, of someone you don't even know and you haven't even gotten a chance to even know. Both in terms of Rarity for Trenderhoof and Trenderhoof to Applejack. How about Applejack in the episode and her character? I think one of my favorite things in this episode is just because how funny she thinks this all is in a lot of ways. It's easy to think that Applejack might be when Rarity first adopts like the full-on persona and comes out in like the straw hat and the jeans and the really strong hillbilly accent to try and present her new idea for this event she's putting on. Applejack just kind of breaks down and just absolutely laughs because she knows what's going on and and she knows this is like not who Rarity is at all, and she just breaks down and just laughs about it, which I just loved. She's almost crying. She's laughing so much. And I think Applejack also she got a little frustrated with Rarity, especially at the at that part in the episode, but not really because Rarity was doing some horrible imitation of her or anything, but more because she knows that Rarity, that isn't who Rarity is, and she's ruining everything, and ruining this event she's trying to put on, and making herself look like a fool just to try and impress this other person with this outlandish hillbilly kind of parody costume of it, and not listening to any reason. So that's how sort of causes Applejack then to raise the stakes and sort of do that same exact thing with becoming Apple Jewel, and kind of showing Rarity by example how ridiculous it is. Because as soon as Rarity sees Applejack dressed up like that, it's like Rarity pretty much explicitly states to Applejack, breaking her character in there, that this is just ridiculous. I mean, that's not who you are, and just pretty much proving Applejack's point to her that Applejack was trying to make about Rarity. Yeah, Applejack's kind of has an interesting approach to Trenderhoof. At no point does she really, until the end, explicitly state in any way, like, "Oh, I'm not interested. Like, leave me the fuck alone." She kind of just tries to just brush him off, or just leave, or "Oh, I gotta do other things." Like when she runs into the chicken coop and kind of sneaks away. It's kind of funny, different things. She just doesn't really understand or really know kind of what to do in that situation. And I think she probably just would have kept dealing with it until it kind of gone away. She was obviously a lot more concerned about Rarity, and kind of how Rarity was handling the situation. And just in terms of these two characters, it was nice to have an episode that kind of showed them, both having that understanding of each other, and getting along as friends, and in the end, and having that understanding, being that where they kind of came from, how opposite they are, and going back to episodes like the episode back in season 1 where they had the sleepover and stuff, and kind of the rivalry and the differences that they dealt with, and that episode between them, and learning a lot more about each other there, and seeing that kind of continue here in episodes like this one. I definitely like. I'm a fan of Applejack and Rarity episodes like this, and Made in Manhattan later in a couple seasons from here. And seeing just how these two characters, who are so opposite for each other, can get along and solve problems and stuff like that. And it's interesting for Applejack's character, because we all know that she's the element of honesty, but at the same time, she doesn't normally have that very blunt nature of honesty, and she's not always very blunt. Rainbow Dash is a lot more blunt in her dialogue usually than Applejack is. And we see that kind of in this episode here, where she never really explicitly sort of tells Trenderhoof that she's not interested. She just keeps trying to passive-aggressively brush him off, or just kind of just let him follow her and just rolls her eyes at, all the ridiculous things he's saying to try and impress her. So how about the main star of the show for this episode, Rarity? What does everyone have to think about her and her characterization here?
Rarity always taking that drama queen thing to the next level.
Yep, she definitely lives up to the drama queen role.
It's just who she is and just what she does. Rarity was just the best in this episode, and I mean, this was like Tabitha St. Germain just did one of her top performances.
Yeah, I mean, this is about the furthest that we've seen Rarity get away from her core character here, and just to the point where she's acting just totally ridiculous there at the end, and gives this very, very, very much overdone parody of Applejack and her persona there, to the point where she goes and dives into mud, which is the kind of the snapping point for her there.
Remind me of something. Did we actually see the fanning couch in this episode?
I don't recall seeing it. No.
It doesn't really matter. I was just more asking out of curiosity than anything.
She was dramatic, but it was kind of like a sincere dramaticism, because she actually gets to the point where she actually breaks down, and and when that scene with Spike where she's very much hurt in there. It isn't just like, oh, over the top, oh, let me faint on my couch. She's actually kind of like laying at a table there, kind of crying into her hooves. Definitely continues something we've seen a lot of Rarity both before and after this episode in terms of her idolizing people. I mean, we see Rainbow Dash idolizing the the Wonderbolts and stuff, but Rarity really idolizes a lot of people. We see it with all the fashion designers and all of the different models or singers or fashion designers that she's come into contact with over the course of the series. All these people that she really looks up to in terms of being authority figures in the fashion world or the cuisine world or high society world, like we've seen in the past episodes with her, choosing between her friends and high society and what was his name though? I forget his name. The really high society guy.
Stranger Hoof.
No, not
Blue Blood. I lost my head.
Not Blue Blood. Not Blue Blood. Not Blue Blood. The other guy. Fancy Pants.
No,
Fancy Pants. Yeah.
Yeah. Just looking at, and that's something we see here as well, where she's very
At
much
least Fancy
looking
Pants was a bro, though.
Yeah. But really much looking up to and idolizing someone here with Trenderhoof. To the point where she has this whole like false romanticism of him without ever meeting him. She's at the point where she's like waiting at the train there, and she has to rely on kind of Twilight to that was a funny scene too, just relying on Twilight to try and look for him and stuff. And it kind of continues that part of her character in this episode, just and maximizes it up to the point where she's so obsessed with and idolized of this person that when that person rejects her, she's going to try and do anything in her power to try and change that. Yeah, and this is a little more than some of those past episodes where she's looking up to them in terms of either being a big name in the fashion industry or a big name in high society, and looking for that recognition, looking for that acceptance, or looking for that guidance in terms of in terms of people that are high in the field. This is a little bit different because this is, I mean, obviously a lot of the same things, but she obviously has, a very big crush on this person versus a lot of the other people that she idolizes, which kind of turns this into a whole other bowl of soup here. Yeah, Blue Bloodhead was in Sweet and Elite. That's the episode I was referring to. Yeah. Who are you talking about there, DM? I'm not sure what character you're talking about. Are you talking about Trenderhoof in terms of him coming back for a comedic effect, or to be a punching bag, or? If you're talking about Trenderhoof, I agree with Tam. I mean, he's kind of a one-off character where he's kind of learned his lesson and moved on back to his normal life. Oh, Blue Blood? I doubt it. I mean, he has such a small, unimportant part in that one episode, and really, there's no reason to bring him back. Not that they couldn't, I guess, but where do you go from there? I mean, the only reason you'd bring him back is to have something to do with Rarity, but they've kind of already done that here in this episode with Trenderhoof, so. Yep, we do see Trenderhoof make a cameo there in the friendship games. Anything else for characters or character development in this episode for anyone or any other characters we missed that anyone wants to point out?
I don't think we really missed anyone, to be perfectly honest.
I did like, just on a little side note, Pinkie Pie at the beginning of this episode. I liked kind of her portrayal there because she gets really, really excited at the beginning, like, maybe it's gonna be me, and of course it's gonna be me. I'm the big party player and stuff like that. But she gets really kind of over the top excited there, and then kind of the rest of her friends kind of tell her to like calm the shit down. And she has this like knowing look, like she realizes that, I may have just kind of overdone it there. He doesn't completely oblivious to that. She's just kind of like, oh crap, I kind of overdid it. Much like Rarity kind of overdoes it in this episode. Yeah, I mean, you can't really make an episode out of something with blue blood. I think as a character best left in the past there. I don't think Pinky was weird per se. I mean, she was very much excited about this party and very much hopeful and thinking that maybe I'm going to help plan this party and stuff. And of course, she's all about parties and gets very excited and gets very much overexcited about that, which she then immediately realizes after it's pointed out to her. Yeah, but it's kind of like at that point you're pretty much rewriting a character with him. I don't know.
That's why I said, fan stuff, because fan stuff doesn't really apply that well. Also, I slightly apologize for not really speaking that much. I was going back. I'm doing a little bit of off-screen grinding on the Final Fantasy thing outside of what I did last night, and turns out I didn't save from when I left off. So I had to do the ice cave all over again. So kind of focusing on that while listening in on the conversation here. So I apologize if I'm not being a little more involved as I would otherwise be.
I guess, but it's hard to do that without just kind of forcing it there and and just being kind of out of place. And plus, we're going in 7 seasons in now, so it's kind of maybe been a little too long for something like that to happen. Anyway, we're getting a little off track with that, so we'll go to the next thing. I mean, do we really even need to say anything for voice acting in this episode? It kind of speaks for itself in terms of what we're going to talk about.
Tabitha really knocked out of the park.
I mean, Tabitha killed it.
Yeah.
with Rarity, and keeping Rarity's personality and character, and then kind of giving it that country tinge, and then just keep cranking it up throughout the episode to the point where she's just completely ridiculous by the end.
Yeah, Tabitha was just probably the best out of this entire episode. Not to saying that Ashley Ball or whoever voiced Trenderhoof wasn't bad, but yeah, Tabitha was just top notch, bar none. Say, give me a second. Who did voice Trenderhoof? Let me pull that up real fast.
Radio Dog is mentioned in chat. It was Doran Bell.
Oh, that's right.
He really hit the kind of maybe like full of himself, trend-setting kind of person on the head there with the voice. It was great. Yeah, great. Not only hearing Rarity doing just a very over-the-top impression of Applejack and Rarity's character, but then also hearing Applejack also doing that very fancy Rarity-like accent and mannerisms in Applejack's voice as well. They both did a very good job of keeping their character, and they're not just doing a impersonation of Rarity or an impersonation of Applejack as themselves. They're doing an impersonation of those characters within their current character. which can be hard to do, and I think they both pulled it off very nicely.
Say the imitations that they made of each other was really good.
Mm-hmm. And I really loved hearing Rarity kind of going back and forth between her normal voice and her parody Applejack Southern kind of voices through it. Because there's a lot of times where something happens where she kind of breaks out of her character, like I mentioned previously, when she first when Applejack first shows up as Apple Jewel, and Rarity's kind of snaps out of her character and goes back into her normal voice, like, oh, this is that's because being ridiculous here, nothing like you.
The way her voice cracks when she shouts that Sheila's being covered in mud.
Yeah. And that total derp face when she says it.
Yeah. Oh, the way her eyes just cross like that.
What's so funny? It's like, this is really, it's Tabitha doing Rarity's voice, doing a very bad impression of Apple, Southern kind of a voice, and it was really all the mannerisms and sort of the bad accents and bad emphases on words were really well done.
See, if I recall correctly, didn't Applejack just react to how Rarity was going with that really bad accent?
Yeah, that's when Rarity first came up on the stage in that kind of full button down, jean overalls and the hat and stuff, and started doing that really over the top impression. That's when Applejack kind of broke down and started just laughing and like leaning on Twilight or someone because she's laughing so hard. So, moving on to the humor of the episode. I mean, a lot of the humor is the more broad kind of humor in terms of it just coming from the episode's plot itself and what happens in the episode rather than just straight up jokes. So a lot of the humor stuff we've already talked about in terms of, Rarity impersonating Applejack and kind of progressing farther and farther into that over-the-top caricature of Applejack's character, and then, of course, Applejack is Apple Jewel as well. But what other things do we have in the humor here that everyone liked or didn't like?
Let's see. We have... Jeez, what do I got here? I guess we got the thing of Derpy Hooves right there with Trender Hoof calling her unappreciated. That could be kind of a bit of it's not so much funny by itself in the context of the episode, but on a meta level, it's kind of amusing considering how the whole Derpygate thing was going on.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I remember when that happened, a lot of people were sort of pseudo-angry or found it weird because I think they thought it was directed at the fan base. Like, no, what are you talking about? The fans love Derpy. Man, this episode's so out of touch or something like that. But I mean, I think it was a lot more directed at sort of both, kind of Hasbro and sort of some of the backlash that happened following the last roundup. It was kind of more of a comment towards her being unappreciated in that level rather than the fandom being unappreciative of her, which obviously doesn't make any sense. But I found that line pretty funny, kind of like Mr. Ben said, like kind of a meta level of humor regarding sort of how Derpy's character had been treated in the past. And of course, since this episode premiered, that's changed a lot because there's a ton of Derpy merchandise, and pretty much Hasbro has really much embraced her since this episode. And obviously not calling her derpy, but she's gotten a lot more screen time in the show, and a lot of merchandise, both in apparel and especially in the toys as well, and kind of embracing that in the toys, which was nice to see. But at the time of this episode, remember she had just very recently in Rainbow Falls just been brought back into the show itself. So it's kind of a meta humor on where she was kind of as a character at this point before Hasbro kind of got over that initial knee-jerk reaction that happened after the last roundup and started, embracing her a little bit more in terms of how much the fans liked her as a character.
I really loved Rarity's "oh shit" moment when Applejack revealed that the dress that she was wearing, that the one that Rarity just got muddy, was actually one of Rarity's own.
Yeah.
Rarity's like, "I need 3 gallons of boiling water and an ounce of detergent stat."
I have to agree that both in terms of humor and just on a character level, I really also liked that Rarity at the train station while they're waiting for Trenderhoof to stop, just being so ridiculously just nervous and just over the top nervous in that scene, to the point where Twilight literally has to just kind of say, "Are you serious?" and push her forward with her magic in order to get her to actually go and talk to Trenderhoof. It was really funny and also really cute. And yeah, we mentioned earlier, of course, the whole Spike moment where Rarity's talking about, "Oh, how Spike, you don't know how it feels to have to very pine for a pony or whatever, and have them reject all your advances." And then Spike just kind of gives that deadpan look at the camera, which is with that fourth wall break, which is just so hilarious. Some Spike at his best kind of humor is when he's doing those kind of sarcastic looks at the camera like that.
I have to slightly agree with Tim. Not so much in the terms of her climbing into the chicken coop, but also the fact that when she climbs out of the hiding, she basically goes complete Solid Snake on trying to sneak past Trenderhoof.
Yeah.
And then even in the background, you could see him trying to apple buck and getting an apple stuck on his horn, which he proceeds to promptly begin eating.
Or how about Rarity's graceful apple bucking? She does a little dance and knocks in just one apple falls.
I think we also covered it, but Rarity's like, "If there's one thing I love, it's hauling apples," and Trenderhoof's like, "I'm growing fond of it," and as well. And Applejack's like, "Maybe the two of you should actually freaking try it sometime."
Can we just talk about some of the stuff that this episode got away with in terms of slight innuendo and just there's sound effects of the boing sound effect, when Trenderhoof sees Applejack and just of course all the slow motion shots of Applejack eating the apple and stuff, and just having all the apple's juices dripping down, things like this. How did they get away with this in this show?
To say, yeah, that right there, like you mentioned, the whole point of Applejack just kind of eating that balloon, or not eating the balloon, eating the apple and just sort of wiping her mouth. I mean, that just, oh man,
yeah,
that is, what's the term I'm thinking of?
Yeah, I mean that caught me by surprise, because that is not something I would expect to see in this show for many reasons.
And say we also had a bit of cider tasting recalls of ponies treating deep beverages as alcohol, so that's kind of another good one right there. I mean, there's some more idea playing with the idea that the Sweet Apple Acres cider is alcoholic when Rarity arranges the testing of it, but setting out exactly as if it were a wine tasting. Then, of course, we had, Applejack doing her Apple Jewel thing, and she's doing that walk away from the camera with the camera focused directly on her. Or more accurately, her considerable rear shelf, to put it mildly.
Because all of Rarity, especially again at that train station, all of her reactions to seeing Tran just kind of fainting and just crossing her legs and stuff like that during that scene, it was pretty funny. And of course the whole all natural line.
Yeah.
All natural indeed. There's even times where Trenderhoof's comments, and he's trying so hard to impress Applejack that some of his comments really sound of kind of like borderline racist comments. Like when he says, I have such a respect for the work ethic of Earth ponies. Like, as speaking as as a unicorn, it's almost borderline like kind of a racist comment there. And Applejack's like, gee, thanks. Yeah, that was the other line here. Is I once had an apple so rare they thought it was extinct. I ate 4 of them. And Trenderhoof's little poem was also really funny, and with all these rhymes with Rarity throughout in the little poem, and then ending with Applejack is completely breaking the rhyme scheme. Yeah, Rarity's a little obsessed with Trenderhoof. Yeah, the Trenderhoof definitely seems to be high society Canterlot unicorn type. I don't think he gets around Earth ponies that much. Definitely not really down to earth kind of country farm ponies like Applejack at the very least. Yeah, I mean Trinder. I mean, he definitely isn't as high society in terms of that idea, like Blue Blood or Fancy Pants are, but he's definitely kind of a very high society in terms of importance in fashion or trend setting or whatever. Yeah, blogger celebrity, yeah, pretty much. Because same idea in magazines, yeah. I don't even know if I call him being demeaning to others. I mean, I think everything he does is kind of unintentional. I think he's definitely a little what's the word I'm looking for? I hate when you can think of a concept, but then you forget the word that goes with it. ignorant. Thank you, thesaurus. That's the word I'm looking for. Ignorant of of sort of Applejack and the whole farm life. Being interested in it, but being completely ignorant in it. And the worst part is he's not just ignorant of it. He's trying to make it seem like he's not ignorant. He's trying to be like he's the big trend center. He's cool before it's cool. He knows everything about all the cool stuff like farms. And you've seen multiple occasions in the episode where he tries to impress Applejack with his knowledge, and it just kind of winds up falling flat because he really doesn't know anything about it. He's just trying to impress her by putting on this facade like he does know. Much in the same way like Rarity does in the episode, putting on the facade like she really truly understands, farming and stuff. I mean, she knows who Applejack is. She's good friends with Applejack. She knows who she is and what she does, but at the same time, she doesn't, that's not for her. She never took the time to fully understand everything, and that's kind of where she starts doing the same thing. On that note, we also have like the animation and the visuals in this. I really like kind of the apple jewel design and Rarity's very over the top stereotypical hillbilly clothing design as well. It was nice. I really like Trenderhoof's design because he had a very tall, slender look, which at this point in the series, we hadn't really seen a lot of that kind of body type. I mean, starting in season 3 is when the show starts really experimenting with more different body types other than kind of the stock normal one that the main 6 and most of the ponies have. So it was nice again seeing them having a pony that has a slightly different body type than the standard. And there's just, of course, a ton of visual gags. I've seen a lot of them posted in the chat already, and mainly from that final scene where Rarity and Applejack are kind of having that duel there between the two of who can out-parody each other. and Rarity just gets more and more, ridiculous and, having cross eyes and putting her, hoof up to her nose and stuff like that. And Applejack as well, doing all the blowing kisses and doing the duck face and stuff. I always like seeing characters do a different hairstyle because in a show like this and most animation, usually characters are locked down to a specific look for it. For consistency's sake, for ease of animation's sake, most characters adopt the same look throughout the entire series. And a lot of times in series where characters have clothes, they even wear the same clothes for every episode. So it's nice in things like this to see characters, temporarily have like a new hairstyle or a new clothing and stuff. And it's nice, even though it's kind of funny in a lot of ways, it's nice to see different looks, on Applejack and on Rarity as well, and how they adapt to those looks. Yes, the drawings that Spike shows off of kind of like the plans for the event that Rarity's putting on, and we see them again at the end, and they kind of morph into a full scene. They're really, really good drawings. I believe, if I recall correctly, those drawings were done by one of the episode's storyboarders. I think it could have been that. I think it was the storyboarders. I can't remember if I remember the right, because there's some episodes where they're done by the storyboarders. Sometimes they're done by like the character or costume designer, the design staff or art director. And I forget exactly what it was for this episode. But yeah, Corey Toomey and John Young storyboarded this episode, and they, of course, just did a fantastic job with, especially in that final scene where so much of this comedy in this episode is relying on the visuals. There was a lot of good things set up by them and the storyboards. Anything else for the humor or visuals of the episode that anyone wants to point out?
Nothing really comes to mind on my end.
Ooh, one more thing. I know we kind of already mentioned it, but I did really appreciate the slow motion animation on Applejack in that first part, not the one where she's biting the apple, but the one before that where she kind of does the slow thing. She kind of throws her hair around in just a ridiculous way. We're kind of seeing that through Trenderhoof's eyes rather than what's actually happening in the episode. Same with the apple thing. Those are really seen through Trenderhoof's eyes rather than Applejack actually, doing that in the show's. In the show's world, there is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, that animation, that kind of slow motion animation, which is not slow motion animation is not something that's easy to do because it pretty much requires you to animate like 2, 3, 4 times the amount of frames for one scene. But that turned out really nice. One of the things I came to my mind when I was watching this episode earlier today again, but something that not really specifically for this episode, but just as a show as a whole, is just how well they pull off the animation in Flash, and it's kind of funny, and I should compare this animation to some other animated shows on TV, and in a lot of ways it's and some you're kind of working with the pluses and negatives of Flash versus something like Toon Boom Harmony, and in a lot of ways. You look at something like this and it's maybe not as good, animations maybe aren't as fluid, characters are pretty much stuck to a model, and you don't have that whole cartoony squash and stretch like you can get with something that's more hand-drawn versus something like Flash, where a lot of things it's more like controlling a puppet rather than animating something, with each frame, you're drawing a new character by hand for it. But at the same time, they get away with a lot more animation, because something you'll notice in a lot of Toon Boom Harmony animated shows on TV is that the animation on maybe the character that's talking or doing something in the action can be good at times, but if the character is just talking or if there's other characters in the background, a lot of times they're just still and they're not doing anything. But something I noticed in this episode, and you can apply this to every episode of the show, is you see a lot more animation in it than you might see in a lot of other shows, whereas characters in the background are fully animated doing stuff, or maybe if a character's talking, it's not just their mouth and eyes moving, but they might be doing some other stuff with their body as well. Because the ease of Flash, you can get really caught up in the easiness of that Flash makes to animate stuff, and you get really lazy, and you get a lot of lazy Flash animations. But when you work to the strengths of it, it allows you to actually maybe animate more. Since you're just puppeteering a lot of things, and you might even be able to reuse some puppeteered animations, you allow more things in the scene to be animated rather than some traditionally animated shows where the animation is really good, but a lot of times stuff in the background or stuff that's not important might just be frozen, and if you kind of unlock your gaze from the characters that are taking the center of the frame, it kind of might look a little bland or like nothing's happening. But with MLP, everything's always so animated in the background to the point where if you take, and unlock your eyes from whatever the character has the focus of each frame, you see a lot of other stuff happening in the background. It makes it feel really alive. So it might not be as beautiful as animation in terms of, the fluidity or cartooniness of it. But you notice a lot in this episode, just, there's a lot of stuff going on with all the characters in the background, which is something I really appreciate about what this show does in terms of using Flash's advantages to the show's advantage. And don't get me wrong, I'm really also looking forward to seeing what they can do with Toon Boom in the movie. This is something that's more related to animation on television rather than kind of traditional animation in movies where there's a lot more budget and a lot more time, and you're only animating for maybe 90 minutes, maybe 20 minutes maximum. That's not really many animated movies that long. But when you're looking at TV, when you're animating, 26 episodes maybe of 22 minutes each, it's multiple movies of length. It's kind of hard, in traditional animation to make sure everything looks beautiful. Even in stuff like the early episodes of Star Versus, which I think is like when the first 6 episodes when Mercury was animating that, some of the best animation I've seen in terms of the cartooniness, the squash and stretch, the use of smears and blur to really have the animation seem very fluid. But even then, in the background of a lot of scenes, you got to cut some corners somewhere, and I think Flash enables them not to have to cut those corners in the background. I am not familiar with Adobe Animate, so I really have no idea what that entails. I will say I don't see them doing that just because this show's been going on for 7 seasons now, going into 8 seasons. You already have all of your workload, all of your assets. This is the same reason I give why even after the movie they're not going to be moving the show to Toon Boom, because you already have all of your assets, all of your characters, all of your stock animations. And more importantly, even if you can import all those, you have all of your workflows, and that's something that the show has had from the beginning. Thanks to what's his name? The other director that was originally on the show with Jason. He developed a lot of the custom Flash tools that they use to animate this and to help their animation process in it. And you're pretty much losing those if you go to another animation tool suite. And all that stuff, again, is just going to be more money. You're going to be putting more money, have to put more money into it to get the same kind of quality out. So I don't see them changing over animation to any other software, simply because they have the tools in place, they have the process in place, they have their workflows in place, they have their assets in place already. And the show's been going on so long now, they have a lot of assets and workflows in place to do everything. And so they can continue to improve upon the animation every season because they don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. They can just build upon what they already have. And that keeps them improving. It keeps the animation cheap and allows them to animate more. The movie is a different best. I really thought they were going to use Flash for the movie just because, it allows you to do it a lot cheaper, but looks like they're going to kind of go all in for a movie. It's it's not like you're animating an entire season. It's going to be 90 minutes, so they can invest a little bit more money into the feature to make new assets for those.
And it may get more well worth being on the big screen than just being a big Flash animated thing on the big screen.
Yeah, and I think that's something like going on what DM12 says here is something that is really it's not just the character models looking good. The character models usually look great, and the costumes they put on are great, even if they're a little sharp like a lot of Flash characters would be. One of the strongest suits of this is definitely in the backgrounds, and that's something we've seen improve more than probably anything else over the 7 seasons is characters. You have to be able to animate them. They're going to be pretty, maybe a solid color. They use After Effects really well to add the lighting and shadow effects on them, but more or less if you make them any more complicated, they're going to become harder to animate in Flash. But for the background, since they're just static locations, we've seen those and their look just improve immensely. And you can go back and find those photos of comparing Fluttershy's cottage from like season 1 and season 2 to season 5 and 6, stuff like that. And they've really improved the backgrounds and the amount of detail and work that's gone into those. Anyway, we can continue. Continue now to the music and the score of this episode. So this episode introduces to a couple new themes. The most prevalent of the themes featured in this show is definitely the kind of the love theme for the episode, which we've heard in a couple episodes in later seasons for different things. But this episode has a very much a singular motif that drives the episode forward, which is this love theme, and we hear that right here at the beginning in the first track in Ponyville Days here. So let me just cue this all up so we can start listening to it. Oops. Okay, so yeah, we'll hear that. Let's load up this first song here, and you'll hear that that love theme at the somewhere I think near the end of this track here. here's that theme here. So we'll hear that as that theme as the episode continues here. Has a really nice little chime part there and mount part at the end, right at the beginning there. We've heard that motif in later episodes and later seasons as well. So next we get to Trenderhoof and his introduction, and so he gets this very kind of very, very fitting score for him here. Very stuck up sounding, trendy kind of motif for him here. Just gotta wait for him to arrive here. This is Rarity just starts having one of her moments. Here's his theme. And then get to the love theme. And that love theme continues into the next track here as Trenderhoof meets Applejack. Little Applejack motif there. There's that little drop of the love theme here. And it brings back in that string and kind of chime cue there as Rarity's gushing over him, and then that record scratch as he notices Applejack. That'll stop there. course, we don't have a song in this episode, but we do have Mr. Trenderhoof doing his little trendy little poem.
Without farm life, there'd be such disparity. These thoughts I think with great clarity. Apples high to the sky, she's the one of my eye. That fruit-hauling pony named Applejack.
Of course, ending with that there. From there, Rarity starts to go off the rails, and we start getting her score becoming a little bit more off the rails as well, in addition to having more Applejack kind of score or Applejack kind of instrumentation backing Rarity. Of course, Rarity is almost exclusively backed with harpsichord for her, but here we start hearing her being more backed with, some off-sounding banjos and other things that Applejack would normally be backed with. Some really off-sounding banjo there. But it still mixes in some harpsichord too, so you kind of get this dueling nature between the harpsichord and banjo and Rarity and Applejack's instrumentation here. Okay, so from there we start getting to the end of the episode, and we get to the track for the climax of the episode here. So this is the dueling track between Apple Jewel and Rarity. So we get a couple different things here in terms of both the music going between Applejack's Apple Jewel music or score, and the more insane off-the-wall score as Rarity goes further and further into madness here. We also get that really good tango track here for Apple Jewel as she walks onto stage. I really like this track. There's some more of that banjo for Rarity there. Now we start getting the score kind of dueling itself as the characters do. It's fun hearing that between kind of the Apple Jewel, very string-driven, chime-driven, very nice and high-class score, to then going back and forth between that and Rarity's kind of out-of-control banjo country, over-the-top country score. Next track, we get to the lesson of the episode there, and this one starts out with a really, really nice harp and choir score to start this out before it goes into one of Rarity's lesson motifs that we've heard in Rarity episodes past and present. Really like the emotion in the score here. Some Applejack score here as Trentorov comes in that complete country getup. And here's Rarity's lesson motif here. See. So, and then we get to the final score here for the episode, which is the very high-class string quartet piece that is played over the Rarity kind of monologuing over the finale with the kind of the moral of the episode as we show the final party that she's been putting on. It's a nice little waltz here. That leads us to the end of the episode there. So a little bit lighter in the score, especially when we had a lot to talk about musically wise yesterday. But I really like the love theme in this episode. It's very much over the top and very kind of like a very what's the word I'm looking for? Exaggerated kind of love theme. Very for it, and I really liked it for that. Some nice use of kind of mixing Applejack's and Rarity's score as Rarity sort of tries to imitate Applejack there, and then a nice kind of dueling score between the two at the end. Here's a couple themes in here, some of the ones we heard at the end there, as well as the love theme that have been, again, used and reprised in future episodes of the show as well. So a lot of setting up to kind of future motifs. So what did everyone think about the episode's theme and moral?
Pretty much exactly what you said right from the very early on, indicating that, just be yourself. Don't try to be someone you're not.
Yep. And pretty much building on that, kind of, it's not worth, it's not worth trying to impress someone else if you have to change yourself that much. Or I guess I flip it around. It's not worth changing yourself that much just to try and impress someone, especially when you don't really know them. Yeah, because, you can put on a facade, but, how long can you kind of keep that facade up? So, favorite parts of the episode and any lingering concerns that anyone wants to bring up about it?
Pretty much just rarity. Without a doubt.
Yeah. It'd be hard pressed to say that, anything in this episode was quite as good as Tabitha's performance. It was a good episode. I appreciate that. It's also a story and kind of plot line, I guess, a storyline that I wouldn't expect them to see. I wasn't really expecting to see them try and tackle in the show, in terms of kind of some sort of love triangle. It's just not something that the show really deals with. It's more about friendship. But I think Josh Haber did a good job of picking the right characters to do it, and building upon kind of what you think that those characters would do and how they would interact, and then weaving in that good kind of moral that everyone can relate to about being yourself and and trying to impress others at the end to kind of cap the whole series of events off. See, so overall feelings and final conclusions?
Probably one of the better episodes we've seen. Not my favorite by any means, but definitely one of the better episodes.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like, when I think season 4 of My Little Pony, it's not an episode I immediately think of. I don't think it's the weakest episode, or one of the weakest episodes of the season. It's not the strongest. It's like I said, it lives up to its name. It's a very simple episode in terms of what it does. It's very much character driven in terms of the story, with the characters kind of dictating what happens in the story and where it goes. For what it was trying to do, it pulled it off really nicely. This kind of thing, again with the whole love triangle thing, especially in a show aimed at small kids, it's something you can screw up very easily, I think. They could have very easily made Trenderhoof be a complete dick and unlikable and irredeemable. They could have done a lot of things in the episode that would have made it worse, but I think they did what they should have done if they wanted to tackle this kind of story. This is an episode that I remember not being the favorite of a lot of people, to put it mildly, but I haven't really delved in this episode enough to really see what the main criticisms of it were, other than it being about some sort of romance. A lot of people seem to be completely against any sort of romance in the show or in their entertainment. And of course, a whole another thing about people not liking Trenderhoof and Mr. Waifu Stealer, but I don't know. I haven't really, besides those kind of general things, I've never really seen any major points against the episode, other than maybe it's a little simple and shallow in terms of its story. But personally, I think it set out to do what it was going to do. It had a good moral in it. It was very funny and a fun episode, and entertaining episode as well. And I always enjoy, personally myself, a little biased here, I enjoy Rarity and Applejack episodes. I think they play off each other very, very nicely. I'm not a person that ships characters for it, because I know there's a lot of rare Jack kind of shipping, but I really like them as characters and how they interact with each other. I love seeing little shipping things between them in fan art, just because they usually play off of their differences and how they interact with each other. There's really nice characters to watch interact, and this kind of pushes their differences to their limits, which was nice. I don't know. It's like I haven't looked into anything recently, Dan, but I do remember watching this episode back a while ago. I do remember it not being the most positive reaction to the episode. I can't really remember specifics, because we're talking about how many years ago now. I can't believe it's been that long, but yeah. I think like I said, I think most of it is was just people being opposed to the idea of having some sort of romantic plotline in the show. Because I know there's a lot of people worked up about, Twilight and Equestria Girls as well for the same reason. I mean, that has its own problems, but I mean, a lot of people were just kind of opposed to the general idea of Twilight even having a crush on anyone. And I can kind of understand some of those conclusions. I mean, people don't want this show to become just some sort of show that's driven by romantic plot lines or gets lost in romantic plot lines. There's a lot of shows that have done that. I know Adventure Time has kind of done that in some of its things, and they don't want to kind of lose its way. But I think they this episode in the end, well, it could have gone down that path. It didn't, and it was just it kind of held itself nicely. Yeah, I don't see that happening. I don't think there's any reason for that to happen, or, just because of what the show is and why Hasbro would even allow them to do that. But I know people still get really worried about that for some reason. And it isn't really even the target age that people are concerned about. It's like people just don't really want that to happen in the show at all. And we're really concerned that for some reason the show's going to go down that path. Like, oh my gosh, Twilight's going to fall in love with Flash Sentry, and every episode is going to be about Twilight and Flash Sentry or something like that. I don't know. it's I remember those days when Equestria Girls first showed. Those were good times. Yeah, a lot of people just worry. They worry a lot. I watch the show to be entertained. Well, anyway, thanks for joining us for this episode. We just about hit almost 2 hours, so that's pretty standard for AAA. I wasn't sure how long we'd be able to kind of talk about this stuff, because like I said, there's not a ton to talk about in this episode. It's a good, enjoyable episode, a lot of humor, but not a ton happens to it. It's not like Pinky Pride, where we had a junk load of stuff to talk about. But we did pretty well there. So thank you all for joining us for this episode of AAA. This is episode number 81. Next week is going to be episode number 82, where we will be talking about the second pseudo sort of musical episode of this season, Philly Vanilli. So a lot of stuff again to talk about next week. A lot of stuff, a lot of positive stuff, a lot of potentially negative stuff that people may not have liked about the episode. That we're gonna have to definitely, like it or not, we're gonna have to touch upon it. So we'll definitely be talking about that, relating to Pinky, relating to Fluttershy, and of course all of the songs. There's a ton of songs, of course, being, like I said, sort of a pseudo second musical episode of the season. To talk about. So we'll definitely have a lot of stuff, and of course a lot of plotline relating to Fluttershy and her character and her character development as well. And that will be the last episode Flashback that we'll be having for a while, because the week after that, MOP
I was just about to say,
yeah.
Let's say next week is going to be our last season 4 episode until season 7 premieres.
Yep. So we're going to be diving into
season... Until after season 7 goes on hiatus, or episode. Yeah. There's a break in the episode.
So it can be the last one, and we'll be picking up with the talking about. It can be a very interesting Triple E, because being that the first 2 episodes are in a part 1 and a part 2, they're kind of separate episodes, and I guess we'll see how much they tie together. It's going to be kind of a first for us. We'll have to kind of see what, after the episodes premiere, kind of see what they actually are, how separate the episodes are, and we might have to kind of change about how we talk about them, and if they don't tie together as closely as part 1, part 2 episode would. So it's going to be really interesting to talk about for that. And from there, as of right now, we do know, if you haven't seen, we won't be talking about it here because spoilers, but the first 8 episodes have been announced of the show by Discovery Family, as well as their air dates. So far, we should have 8 solid weeks going forward I guess 7 solid weeks going forward, because the 2 show on the same day. So far of new pony to talk about here on Triple E. So we'll see what happens in terms of a mid-season hiatus. Of course, we've kind of gotten into a nice groove of having the past 2 seasons having that mid-season hiatus. So we'll see when that picks up, if it picks up. As soon as it does, we'll get back to talking about season 4. We'll kind of have to see how long it is and when it happens. And of course, with the movie, and they may play it a little differently. So we'll see about that. But we'll be picking up, of course, where we left off here in the middle of season 4, whenever we have a gap in new episodes, whether that be a week, 2 weeks, or a month for it. And of course, we'll also have to work in the Equestria Girls shorts when or shorts, or the 3 specials that they have. If they release them all at once, if they release them separately, that's potentially 3 other Triple E's that we'll have to do at some point as well and work in. So a lot of logistical things, but it's just going to kind of be, we'll get there when we get there. And of course, in under 20 episodes now, we'll be hitting episode 100 as well. So we will be hitting episode 100 of Triple E at some point during the progress of season 7 here. So
let's just hope that new episode that airs that week, it warrants us to have a very good discussion for the 100th episode.
I guess we'll see what happens, if it happens during the hiatus or what. It's just one thing we'll have to wait and see.
If it's not, we could always discuss episode 100 again.
That's still one of my favorite episodes. That's probably one of the episodes I've rewatched the most of the show. It's just so enjoyable to watch. But anyway, coming up, going forward, no CQ riffs this week. We do have a little bit of news that I guess I can mention here real quick, is that according to one of the trailer sites that watches trailers, there is supposed to be a little over 30-second teaser trailer for the MLP movie coming out sometime this week. It's supposed to be showing with the new Smurfs movie, and also supposed to be posted online sometime this week. So we're not really sure what it entails. Teaser trailers can sometimes show something, sometimes they show nothing. Sometimes teaser trailers are little more than just text on the screen with some music in the background, kind of maybe giving you a generic view of what the plot is and the characters involved. So we might see some animation, we might not see some animation. It might tell us stuff we don't know, or it might not. So depending on that, we may or may not have a This Week in Pony episode next Monday. It kind of just depends on what kind of has with that. There are the 8 episode announcements to talk about, I guess, on This Week in Pony, but I don't want This Week in Pony to kind of devolve into, as we get into the new season here, to devolve into kind of Triple E 2, or like where we talk about episodes before they premiere. I don't want it to just be every week we're just talking about the new episode summaries or anything either. So we'll see how much there is to talk about in terms of what comes out this week for the teaser trailer for the movie. I'm not getting that hyped up for it. I'm totally going into it expecting it to be just text on the screen with some music in the background and not seeing any animation, but we'll see what happens. But other than that, next Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, we definitely will be having our final episode of Flashback for now here on Triple E with Philly Vanilli. So anyway, thank you all so much for coming today and joining us. We'll see you all next week. Have a great evening, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.
Later, folks.